Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Lima. I'm the social media coordinator here at Boston Women's Film Festival, and welcome to our third annual Film Fest, virtual extraordinaire. We're so excited to be showing this amazing feature. It's the second feature by Caru Alves de Silva. An incredible filmmaker based out of Brazil. We're so excited to have My Name is Baghdad featured in this year's festival. Today we have with us our special guest and youth programmer, Nettie Hitt, with us. Nettie, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, hi everyone. I really love this film, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so excited to have you, Nettie. Thank you for joining us. And first, I'd like to just start opening the conversation about, and I just want to let everybody know who's joining in on the live stream. We're assuming that everyone's already seen the film, so we're not going to void of any spoilers here. And also, if you have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat and we will address them momentarily. Alrighty, first off, we want to talk about the cinematography and the doc style of this film. I thought that like it really spoke to the skate culture of where there's like a lot of VHS videotaping and then like kind of just stitching together videos to create for representing yourself as a skater and then like also your peers in the community. Nettie, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought a similar thing about the cut shots between Baghdad's own film that she's kind of producing about the skater culture, and then also back to like the actual cinematography shots. They were really intertwined in a fascinating way. And it had that feeling like you just described of like VHS kind of makeshift filmmaking that is often integral to skating culture.
Yeah, for sure. And like another thing that I thought was really great that she added in the film was these like random shots or what felt like random shots of which I know weren't obviously, but of just like everyday people like on the streets, like people. There was one of someone like getting into the car. There was like a group of people just like standing by like right outside their house. And it reminded me of like if you like watch like random like skate videos on YouTube, how there's like it's like spread around throughout the films usually and through these videos. And I thought that was lovely that was included in the film through looking at people around them. I really loved those little blurbs. And yeah, another thing about the cinematography was just the lighting was really captivating and how like it was really able to capture the mood. One aspect that I really enjoyed about the story was how safe Baghdad felt or seemed to feel in like her spaces of home, in the salon where her mother's where she works, and how that kind of foiled with the skate park a little bit, where the skate park is seemingly supposed to be a safe space for her as well, but you know and you see throughout the film that she kind of struggles trying to fit into the group that is like mostly male, and that space really opens up when all these girls are introduced towards the end. What did you think about that? The dynamic between how the boys started to react in the story when the girls started to join, their started entering their space.
Um, I found it like very representative of my experience. We started like an all-female skate group among my
Nice.
friends to go to the parks because there's this intimidating feeling of like performance when you're there. It's obviously it's kind of like a show of talent, and the whole there was a point in the film where it, they were making fun of guys who would say like, oh, do a kickflip, show us that you can actually skate and that you're not a poser. And that was like so, it felt so real to me because I've had such similar experiences of like feeling like I had to prove myself by performing, and it felt like very in touch with now, which is
Mhm.
really hard to achieve. Like I think that just relates to how real, how like in touch with 2020 the film was, um, for me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And um too that I really appreciate of the film was that the support of the women that she found was really there, and where it was lacking before. Uh, so she goes to her, who is the boys, harasses her, and she is in a way like rescued by her sister, getting her away from the situation, and then rescued again by the group of women that she has been surrounded by at the skate park. And they see that she's struggling, and that's was an experience that she had a couple nights ago. And instead of like just going letting her leave, they choose to support her in confronting this boy. And I thought that scene was so important, and I was so happy that it was the climax of the film, because having that support system, and then also having all these girls just like straight up, just like no remorse, no holding back, letting the boys know exactly what they're doing and how it's wrong, and they made them be held accountable for their actions, and then also the complicity that they've been showing for each other's behaviors, and not being there for Baghdad, who was just the single girl there up until this point, where now she has like a system and a support group that's there to not only like where she can see herself in other in her fellow skaters, but also as like a cushion to hold these boys accountable for their actions, and like and to show them that just being complicit isn't okay, and just turning a blind eye isn't fixing the problem, and to just saying sorry isn't fixing the problem. Like, you have to fix your behaviors. So yeah, I really, really loved the climax of the film. Did you have any particular favorite parts?
Um, I like you said earlier, those shots of it, they were so candid. The shots of citizens of the city, just kind of standing there, very still moments. I loved those, and it was interesting. They only really appeared towards the beginning of the film, and they didn't reappear throughout. And there was just a few of them. But I think that actually, it didn't weigh down that idea. It didn't become like overpowering throughout the film because there was only, I think, about three of those. So I loved those moments, as well as the scenes in the salon. They were just really fun with like her mom and her two friends. I loved the sense of community I felt in those scenes, and they were so candid, and the conversation and the dialogue was just perfect in so many
Yeah.
ways that I really connected with those.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Me too. I loved the salon scenes. And growing up with Brazilian parents, and me myself being Brazilian, I felt like I was so happy, first off, to have a film made by a Brazilian director, number one. And then number two, when I was watching it, those salon scenes in particular like really connected with home for me, because I remember being like how Baghdad was like just sitting in the corner there, like um you know, because that's where her mom works, so like that's where she's hanging out. But also like I remember being growing up, and like our moms, like my mom would spend like hours at the salon. I remember, I think like 10 years old, I spent maybe 8 hours at the salon with my mom once, because she was getting all sorts of treatments on her hair, her nails, wax, everything happens in one stop place. And there really is a community there, like she's had the same hairdresser since she was 14 years old, so they talk a lot. So I loved that, those parts in particular as well. It really felt homey to me, and just the way that the characters spoke to each other too, with like really snarky and like really no boundaries whatsoever, like felt very representative of Brazilian culture. Um, and oh, we have a question from the chat, and it says, "What do we make of the little sister?" I loved her. I loved her. I thought she was such a light, and her little obsession with Mars and aliens were so cute, and I thought it added a little sense of like wonder, and it was kind of outside the story, but it connected so well with like that sense of family and having a safe space. What did you think, Nettie?
Yeah, I also saw in particular in the moments where they are preparing her interview for NASA, her pitch, um, like kind of an infiltration of American culture into Brazil in that sense. Like when
Mhm.
she was speaking English, and also just the fact that they're talking about NASA, which like is an American federal institution, obviously. So I thought that was kind of a subtle tone I noticed, as well as the fact it was just really fun and cute.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing too. The way that American culture seeps into foreign cultures is really interesting. And I think it definitely played really well through the sister, like that aspect of just the culture in general. Yeah, like for me growing up, like I would always question like why are some words in that you say in Portuguese just an English word with a Portuguese accent? So yeah, it definitely is kind of infiltrates like that, like you said. Yeah, that's really interesting. um I want to talk about next is the gender binary. um and I think a pivotal moment in the film that really talks about that is when the policeman kind of like raids the skate park and pats everybody down, and then when he gets to Baghdad, um he starts just insulting her for having short hair, for being with a crew of skaters, for hanging out with just boys, like, and really like not holding back whatsoever and being very rude, very rude. So I think that moment really brought the topic of gender binary to the forefront of the film, and really made you uh, see that girls still have these societal norms that they have to go by in order to be fully accepted by certain people, which is why it made me so happy to know that like her family, her life was really safe, um and not and her mother never questioned her, and she was always really supportive. What did you think?
Yeah, I definitely think I got the feeling of there was an undertone of like, ooh, how the gender binary is fitting into this, even though it wasn't voiced explicitly. Because of that scene you just described, where Baghdad is her name, but it's her legal name is Tatiana,
Mm-hmm.
which reminded me a lot of that. And also her experiences with gender expression throughout the film, and how she didn't fit in with this idea of femininity that everyone was trying to uh, impose on her and who she is. Um, and it was something that it provoked that thought rather than being like explicitly saying, oh, this character is non-binary, or explicitly mentioning that. I think for me it raised a lot of questions about gender and gender expression and identity, as you see Baghdad kind of move through not fitting in with either of the binaries in some ways prescribed to her, about having to be like ultra feminine, and then in the skate setting having to be ultra masculine.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. From the chat, we have someone asking us to talk about the matriarchal family dynamic in the film, which is huge. It's a definitely, like I said, her family space was definitely one where it was for like her mother in specific was just very supportive and lovely to watch. I loved her character so much, and the way that she added life into every scene that she was in was really, really great. And her dynamic between her three daughters were really interesting, and they all just like fit in like perfect puzzle pieces with little jagged edges here and there, and like for example, Baghdad and her sister, not the youngest one, you can kind of tell that they're kind of opposites. And they like, one's more of like a girly girl, quote unquote, with like the makeup, and Baghdad's, obviously we see her throughout the film, so she is, like you said, doesn't really necessarily fit into any gender norm. She's kind of like in between. And then her little sister, who's kind of a wild card. uh, and her mom just like deals with that very in a lovely manner, and it takes that to into the salon as well, which is really lovely. What did you think?
Now that I'm thinking about that, the space of Auntie's restaurant where she's kind of in charge in some sense, but then there's this like male voice from the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the household with where they only have their mom, there wasn't an oppressive male voice. Like there isn't that um, patriarchal structure, like man who's in charge of the woman we see in the film.
Yeah.
There wasn't in the restaurant. We just hear that voice, but other than that, there's no man really commanding the woman around. So there's a lot of freedom in that sense. Yeah, and I think it feels liberated in some ways and not in others.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, and also too, I think like what foreshadowed the climax of like all the girls sticking up for Baghdad and like holding the boys accountable was that scene in the restaurant where there were two male patrons who started just like talking absolute garbage about women, and they were speaking down on women and degrading them through their voice. And it's not necessarily like they were talking to their mom, to Baghdad's mom, who was sitting like right next to them in the table over. But because the way that they were speaking was just so absurd, they just decided to kick them out and close up for the day. And the fact that they had that power was really lovely. And it showed that Baghdad had these like supreme examples of what female empowerment looks like, and what one can do with that type of confidence. And then also because I think if it was different, and if she didn't have that type of support system and didn't have that representation back at home, the climax of the film would have gone a lot very differently. I think having faith in each other is like really huge, especially when the fear of like not being believed or being called crazy or diminished is really large for women, and especially in spaces that is like mostly male. It's really difficult to come forward and speak up, and because the fear of not being believed, not being supported is so great, and it's so often realized, unfortunately. And so that's why I love that there was an inclusion of just like really strong women throughout the film, regardless of like what the setting was, and Baghdad herself being one of them. Even like she stands up for herself, like even surrounded by the group of boys in the earlier scenes, when she has an opinion, she doesn't keep it to herself. She like definitely vocalizes and is a strong voice in the community that she already inhabitates, and is really good friends with a lot of the boys as well. So when it's interesting that like it was one of them that suddenly made a move like that, and then even so, like she wouldn't have gone up and said something and vocalized the pain that she was going through without having the support of the women that were suddenly brought in. So her life was definitely changed in that aspect, where now she has this group of voices to amplify her own. And I thought that was really huge. Big. um and then also I want to talk about the perspective on Brazilian people in the film. uh I'm curious to know what you think about this, Nettie, because I know what I see, like in terms of Brazilian representation from like the novellas that I grew up watching with my mom, and then also just like everybody knows City of God, and like I'm curious to know what you think and like how this movie impacted that vision for you.
Um, I think in many ways it showed a different side of Brazil, so to speak, than the media shows us here in America often. Um, one really like the stereotypes of like different aspects of Brazilian culture, and then also when you mentioned City of God, um, like favela films and the idea that Brazil, in particular in City of God, the favelas are crime-ridden places. In this film, I thought it depicted poverty in a very different way. In even those scenes in the salon, like there isn't that um, really pessimistic and somber like feeling all the time. There was moments of happiness and joy, um, despite the fact that they didn't have the like most amazing living circumstances. They were happy,
Mhm.
um, and so I think that was one stark difference I noticed, as well as they there was a shot of all the skaters standing at the end of an alleyway that was an allusion to the City of God kind of infamous shot of the boys on one side. And that's kind of when I started thinking, oh, how does this relate to what people think as like the film about what Brazil is? Like City of God must represent all of Brazil and all the perspectives there. Um, but I thought My Name is Baghdad showed a new kind of vision and a different way of seeing things. Obviously, not fully in the favelas, I don't think, but
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. The I it's I think it's like really important how the element of poverty is there, but it's not a subject matter. It's you can see it. I mean, at one point, she has to make a grilled cheese with an iron, and it's definitely there, but it's not an integral plot point or story piece, or it doesn't influence who these characters are and what they're going through in any way. Even when she had to make that grilled cheese because the gas stove was out, it looked fun. Like that entire scene was just like exciting, and they made the best of it, and they were feeding their little sister, and I'm sure she wasn't the it didn't seem like she was super excited about an iron made cheese, grilled cheese, but she was chilling too. She was like hanging out. She was like, yeah, I guess it's fine, like, and it was just there, and it wasn't like the biggest piece, or driving point that the story was making. Another thing too, going off of like City of God, I feel like that's always the movie that people bring up when anytime like Brazilian cinema is talked about. It's just like their go-to to talk about, and I always think like there's so much more out there, and that's not the only one. And I'm so excited that this film in particular is representing the skate culture of Brazil, and because it's also widening this conversation for skate cultures all around the world, because it's huge. It's like, oh, it's really large, and it's everywhere. There's like pockets of skaters and communities of skaters all over the world. So with this movie also gets compared to Skate Kitchen, created by Crystal Moselle a lot, which I'm happy about because it's kind of like a mirror to that story as well, where it's these girls who don't feel identified and don't feel represented at the skate park, and then they find each other and find one another, and then create their own community out of that. And that's happening everywhere in the world, where girls are coming together with like minds, and just creating their own community from where there wasn't any. And for a while before this film, I like follow several different I want to say like fashion brands based out of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And a lot of them are heavily tied with the skate culture. So the way that brand, like that aspect of it, was represented through this film just made me feel really, really at home. And I was like, it opened my heart. And I was very, very excited to have that in a film at our festival. Any last things to say, Nettie? We're just about done here. Almost time.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it, what you said about the community and skating culture. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. All right. I'm just gonna open it up to the chat one last time. If anyone has another question, comment, please feel free to leave it in the comments. All right. Thank you all so much. We have one more Watch With Us series tomorrow night for Coded Bias. And you have until tomorrow night, 11:59 p.m. to watch any film that you haven't already. And yeah, so if you haven't seen My Name is Baghdad and you're joining us here for the conversation, please check it out. It's a beautiful film, lovely, lovely story. And keep an eye out for Karu, because she's incredible. This is her second feature. It went to Berlinale and it won. It was a part of the 14 Plus Awards that it won. It's huge. So definitely keep an eye on her and all the actresses in the film. They're doing great work. And thank you so much, Nettie, for advocating to bringing this film to our festival. I'm so happy that you did. I'm so happy that it's here. And I'm so happy that you could join us today. And yeah. And one last organization that I want to acknowledge is the Boston Latino International Film Festival. Thank you so much for co-presenting this film with us. All right, that's it for us today. Thank you guys so much. Please watch more films and follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for news and updates on the Boston Women's Film Festival. All righty. Thank you